It's time to play a game of Speak and Spell. Here's your look at the Diamond Select. This is the Netflix Castlevania series, Sypha Belnades Collector's Action Figure. Sypha Belnades, Speaker Magician. Leaving behind her family of speakers to aid Trevor Belmont, she finds herself drawn into a battle for the survival of Europe, a region that has brought doom upon itself by taking away the one thing its greatest monster loved. This action figure, Sypha Belnades, is based on her appearance in the TV series Castlevania on Netflix. It features approximately 16 points of articulation and includes multiple accessories. Before we get a closer look at Sypha, the first thing we're going to do is figure out how tall the figure stands. She is going to be a little bit shorter than Alucard and Trevor, the figures that we had looked at before. While I am also about to stop the measurement, there, I just did it right now. I'd like to send out a big thank you to the folks over at Diamond Select who made this review possible. Actually, if you are in the market of picking up all the Castlevania figures that I've covered over the last 3 reviews, you should be able to now find it through various online sites. You can also click the link down below if you're interested. But according to my trusty tape measure, she does in fact stand a little shorter than the other two. She stands 6.7 inches in height. And that, in centimeters, works out to be 17.1 centimeters tall. Obviously, the proof is in the pudding. Isn't that what they say? I think that harks back to old medieval times where things would be hidden inside of puddings. I'm not 100% certain, but that seems like that's about right. Anyways, the proof is in the pudding, certainly to see how the figures stack up to one another. She's sort of sandwiched in the middle by taller figures on either side. The Trevor, the Alucard that we've already had a look at are all nice figures from Diamond Select. The smallest of the batch, and I'm not segregating and selecting her out simply as the last figure to look at because she is the shortest of the 3. In fact, actually, she's got one of the nicest looking head sculpts of the 3 figures. We'll first have a look at all the accessories that come included with her. Hands seem pretty much the consistent talking point with all the figures that we've had a look at up to this point. They're all packed with lots of hands, and Sypha is no exception. We'll have a look at the really cool accessories that Diamond packed included with the figure. We'll start with this one. All of them are sort of split in 2 categories. One with energy magical constructs, and then ones without, sans magic constructs. This being the larger of the 3. You can see it's a flat palm, but then she's got this nice waving magic of energy, sort of a curved arc of energy. It's all been done in translucent blue plastic, and if the color seems somewhat familiar, it's actually the same blue plastic that they also use for Alucard's flame sword. It's really nice the way that they've done this. They're a little tricky, yes, to get into the sockets of the forearms. We'll talk about that in a second as well, but I just like the fact that you include such a thing. Very detailed in the center, and like I said, working its way, spiraling its way out from that. Just a nice looking piece. She does also have this, certainly more projected energy flowing out from her hands. This is a very large spear-like blade of energy. As you can see, it follows similar design elements to the sword. If you would just imagine the sword would be a little bit more 3-dimensional. I like the fact that it does have some flame and texturing done to it, while still utilizing, again, there's my hand behind it, the translucent blue plastic that they used for the figure's hands. I like that. A couple of little smaller ones, though, not quite summoning yet much. She does have the little star, little energies on the ends of her fingers that we've seen a couple of times in the series. And sometimes I just like to display the figure with one of these, because I just like the fact it's subtle, yes, but it's just a nice little added kind of welcoming piece. So when you're looking at the figures, there's something to draw your eyes to it. I mean, certainly without them, there's a lot to draw your eyes to the figure anyways, but I like the fact that they do include such a thing like these. But there's more hands. Oh, there is much, much more hands. Currently in the sockets, Sypha actually does have a pair of closed fists. The figure also comes included with a pair of fanned-out hands, spell-casting hands, not summoning much so far, but a pair of flat hands, dynamic hands, if you will. She has also a couple of horn hands, rocking hands. I had no idea. Sypha likes the fact that she does also include these. love to actually even make use of these hands for something else as well. They kind of even look like Spider-Man's hands, but she does come included with those. She does also come with a hand that gestures with 2 fingers, as you can see right there. That's kind of just a nice gesture to have the arm straight up. And then she also has these hands, which I'm drawing a bit of a blank too. They look like they should hook onto something, and short of maybe just attaching it to the side of her front robe, I can't quite place what else I would actually do with these hands. See what I mean here in a second. I mean, again, if you took them, you could kind of clamp them to the side of her robe, sort of if she's holding them. But the problem is you can't bend the elbow that far anyways to reach the distance required to actually attach it to the front. So even though that seems like a logical place where you could put them, the elbows really don't afford that much luxury. You can't move them as far in as you want. Speaking, though, of the arms, we'll kind of discuss now the figure. I really like the portrait here for Sypha. She might be actually my favorite of the 3 figures that we had a look at. Still pretty close to the way she looks in the show. Just kind of drop that down a little bit to expose her longer neck. This is usually quite the thing that flops around a lot. When you are picking up the figure and putting her back down, I'm always feel compelled to just kind of push that back down so that not all of her neck gets lost amongst the cuff, this giant collar of her robe. Like I said, this does flop around. You can actually remove it. It does involve taking the head sculpt off, but before we do that, I want to show you guys what the head sculpt looks like. It's a very pretty head sculpt, I must say. I like the layered effect of having those strands of hair in the front or foreground with the face further back. Again, it gives you that sense of depth and natural light. The way it falls onto that hair casts a natural shadow against her face. And I think that's really nice the way that they've done that. It does seem like she does have buck teeth. I think the intended plan was to have her mouth slightly open so it shows a little bit of visible teeth inside. The end result, though, is a bit from the distance. It looks like she does have buck teeth, but if you look really closely to her, there you go, you can see that there's, again, a really pretty looking head sculpt. The only thing I really would have done to the hair is probably made it maybe a slight bit more orange, as it certainly seems in the cartoon. It doesn't seem as much blonde color like this, as it is just a little bit of a hint of orange that's added to the hair. I probably would have just added that a little bit, because it does seem a little bit too blonde versus the series. I mean, I guess in a way, really, Trevor's hair should have been a little lighter than the jet black that they decided to go with. So I can't be certainly a stickler pinpointing problems with Sypha's hair and overlooking ones that I never really mentioned with Trevor. Anyways, though, if you are looking to remove this, as this certainly is something that flops around, you can easily, don't quite say easily, but you can most definitely pop the head off the ball joint. Just want to be very careful when you are wiggling this off. There we go. And then you can completely take this off if you wanted to. I like that at least it's finished underneath. Diamond Select thought well in advance that if collectors decided they wanted to take this top piece off, they can certainly still do that. And then you just replace the head sculpt back into the ball joint. The thing about it, though, is the ball joint is very small, and it stays with the head. So when you pop it back into place, just be careful that you don't apply too much pressure to the hairs. You certainly don't want to cause damage to that. And that's what the figure looks like without this. Now, I feel personally that Sypha belongs more so to have this on her. But if you want that look, you can pull that off quite easily. And just like I said, it pops right off the ball joint. As for the figure itself, I guess it would probably make more logical sense to probably put it back the way it was. But you know what, for the time being, maybe we'll just leave it off, because it certainly does allow me to get a little bit more in there and move things like the head. Like, there's a lot of articulation going on here with these figures. More so here in the head, and more so here in the torso. One limitation to this lineup, and you kind of see more so it happening here with Sypha, is the fact that they're very limited when it comes to arm articulation. The shoulders aren't so much the issue, but certainly when it comes to the elbows, for example, what little clearance that she actually does get afforded. I mean, you can't even move the arm. That's about as far up as you can move the arms. Not even a 45-degree angle. There's barely, like I said, any wiggle space, room to kind of grow and move. If you certainly want to put her in spells, I would probably have the arms further up. At least you can pull off something. If you have the arms just straight down, I mean, you can't, unfortunately, move the arms any bit further. If they could have at least allowed the arms to bend at a 45-degree angle, that would certainly be something. But the hinge joint, the way it's set up, just doesn't give you that much clearance. It's a bit of a shame the way they've done that. Just overall, nice detailing done to the coloring of the pastel blue in her top. I guess this would be a tunic. Of course, she does have the skirting underneath here that's split in the middle, so it does allow the figure's legs to still move forward and back if you wanted to. It doesn't confine and limit what you can then do with the legs. They're fully detailed as well. Moving the skirting just out of the way for the second, you can see that there's a lot of detailing and paint that they've added to it. It's not unfinished underneath is the point I'm making. I like the fact that when figure companies design their figures, so even if you are somebody that wants to just make sure there's paint actually on the legs, there is paint actually on the legs. Coloring on these pieces, actually on all the figures, are kept really to one single color. In other words, when there's pastel blue, there's no secondary shading or highlights to it. It's kept only just a single color. It works well, too, also for the way that the cartoon looks and feels. Sypha, like I said, is a nice looking figure. It's a shame that she's so limited from here to here. This is the point where I think this would be such the part that needed to be fixed. Certainly when it comes to displaying her with spells casted in her fingers, you can't quite pull off that desired look, again, unless you bring the arms forward and you bring the arms up. That's about the only way that you can pull off any bit of that look. For her articulation, her head rotates all the way around. I do notice that her hair is a bit prickly. Not to the point of drawing blood, but certainly when you are rotating the head around, you might feel little pricks on both sides. The head moves up and down, right and left. Quite a bit of a ability to rotate the head quite considerably. Unfortunately, though, like I said, when you incorporate this piece on top of it, it's hard to kind of get your hands in there. And a lot of times that collar piece shifts back up. You know what? I feel like I'm not doing a proper service. I'm going to go ahead and just pop the head off just for the time being, because I want to put that back on. After all, if you're likely going to be displaying the figure with that look, I want to be able to at least incorporate that for the entire, at least the remaining of this review. We'll just shift that far down as we possibly can get it, and then put the head back into place. Just wiggle that on like so. Yeah, so it will unfortunately limit some of the things like articulation in the torso, for example. It still shifts, it still rotates, it still moves, but a lot of times this is just going to be moving around a lot in the process as well. It does finish the figure. I think it looks a lot better with it on. Arms hinge out, and they hinge at a 45-degree angle. You can move the arms forward and back as well. At least this part of the collared piece is softer plastic, so at least if you want to move the arms forward, this side's not so much the issue, but at least this side has a little give working in its favor. You can swivel at the bicep. Again, limited, very limited here on the bend on the elbow. Kind of wish that could have bent a little bit more. If only I had a spell to retrieve the head. Oh, wait, I do. No, I don't. Here we go. All right, we'll go ahead and pop that. I don't think I actually put the ball joint completely in place before resuming with the rest of this review. There we go. I'll just pop this in place just like so. I think it's probably the fact that I got the arms so high up. There we go. Move it back down. And then pop the head just back in its ball joint. There we go. All right. As for the legs, we've already sort of discussed the legs. The legs do split. There's a nice split right up the middle there, so you can move the legs out a little bit. You can move them forward and back, but yeah, with what you could probably expect to be limitations, certainly is the case here. Even though this is softer plastic from here to here, it does limit a little bit of what you can actually do with the legs. She does have a swivel. Let me just move the skirt away just for 1 second. She has a 3/4 cut swivel in the thigh. She has a double hinge on the knee, but again, what you're really going to be able to pull off with the figure for essentially something that's really covered with that fabric, that plastic skirting in the first place. Most, if not often at times, when it's going to be displaying this figure, I'm probably just going to be displaying her in a neutral standing pose. That's certainly not what I would want to be doing with, say, the likes of Trevor or Alucard. Unfortunately, though, I think Sypha, because she is so confined to a plastic costume, I'm likely, like I said, just going to be displaying her with straight legs. The biggest problem for this figure is not the sculpt. The sculpt doesn't disappoint at all. I think the sculpt is quite pretty. She is the best, I feel, of the three figures that we had to look at. What limitations I feel comes, it's not necessarily the sculpt, not necessarily the paint, it's more so the ball joints, that hinge, those hinge joints in the arms, the elbows specifically, that really causes limitations when it comes to displaying the figure. She has a lot of cool things working in her disfavor, but unfortunately you can't quite pull them off as well as you would hope, because like I said, she doesn't have that full range happening in the elbows. Something I wish at least could have been incorporated when the figure was first produced. Some saving grace, at least for Sypha, is the fact that she does have shoulder articulation. So if you are picking this figure up for yourself and want to be able to put her in a dynamic pose with the magical energy in those hands, you can at least pull the look off by having the arms either stretched forward or stretched out sideways, like I've got here in final looks. I understand that they didn't want to break up the sculpting of the sleeve. The sleeves look good and the rest of the costume looks decent on Sypha. Unfortunately, though, the sacrifice in that is the fact that she doesn't have the elbow articulation. Again, if it wasn't the case where the shoulders could move, then unfortunately I would be feeling stronger towards it. But at least you can move the arms forward, and as I said, you can move the arms out. So at least in that regard, she does have articulation where it counts. The rest of the figure is sort of confined underneath the cloak. The collar covers around her neck, and a lot of times you may find yourself pulling that back down so that completely not all the neck is lost amongst the large sculpting of the collar. It's a pretty looking head sculpt. I think it might be my favorite of the three. I know I feel the pressure usually to pick the main character as my favorite figure from a line. But even though it's Trevor Belmont, there's nothing really bad necessarily with the figure at all. I just think it's a better looking head sculpt here on Sypha. Could she have had a more orange colored hair like she has in the series? Sure, of course. But overall, I'm really happy with how this one turned out. And really, for that matter, I'm happy with how all the three figures turned out. They have limitations, yes, especially more so in the elbows than anything else. That seems the consistent of the three. But still nice looking figures. If you like the Castlevania series, these are great figures to pick up and add to your collection. If you guys also aren't watching the Netflix Castlevania, do yourself a service and do watch it. Do check it out. It's got a lot of blood and gore to it, so it's right up my alley. It might probably be up your alley as well. But if you have picked up any of these figures, let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of it, or based on this review and this review alone. I'd like to also send out a big old mad props thanks to the folks over at Diamond Select who were nice enough to send both Sypha Belnades as well as the other two figures that we had a look at. Also, if you guys, again, are in the market of picking these ones up for yourself, you can check out through various online sites, or if I can find them, I'll certainly provide the links down below in the video description. If you guys are new to this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, turn the bell notification on, and stay tuned, because there's going to be a lot of videos coming your way. We are kind of wrapping up Castlevania for the time being. I'm sure it will be a line, most likely I'll be revisiting as I love this series so much, but there's definitely going to be a lot of other videos coming your way. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.